Hello, and welcome to Pivotal Moments, a podcast sharing, exploring, and celebrating stories of change through mindset and wellness and their impact on relationships, both to ourselves and others. We are all agents of change and have the power to pivot at any point, at any time. I'm your host, Melissa Robena, along with my co-host, Siria Gutierrez. On this episode, we discuss the importance of taking mental health days. We share the struggles we had as young professionals with balancing the perception of being productive with taking time off and how we overcame it. Now we realize the importance of prioritizing ourselves in order to perform at our peak.
So, we're going to talk about taking a day off.
Not even just talking about taking a day off, right? Like mentally removing yourself from the things.
Yes.
Also known as a mental health day.
It can be a mental health day. I think because some people might not like that term because it's stigmatizing, right?
I almost see it. Well, I mean, I suppose words create worlds, right? But for me, I find it as like a day for like a little R&R, a little day for myself to do whatever it is I want, even if that's nothing at all.
And I think that's the way I want to think about it. It's a day that you take off to really literally take off. Like, don't do anything. We're allowed to do that. Shocker, I know.
So, listeners, you might remember, God, it was like one of our very first episodes. I was talking about how I always needed to stay busy.
Yes, because otherwise you associated not doing stuff with being lazy.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is the pandemic or just me getting older or whatever, but I am understanding the importance of, okay, so if we're not calling it mental health days, what do you want to call it?
Well, no, I'm just saying it can be called a mental health day, or it could just be, I just want to take the day off. I just need to give myself a break.
Well, so the pandemic, I was working from home prior to the pandemic and the world shutting down. Then with the pandemic and the stay-at-home orders, like this became my prison. But I just found that I was just like grinding, and that like led to depression and all these things. And my husband insisted, he's like, look, you haven't left this like house in like over or close to a year. Let's go to Zion for a weekend, like a short weekend, and just get away. And I have to tell you, I took pictures, but I made sure not to post any until I got back because I really wanted limited phone time. And what I loved most about it, besides like not responding to emails or working or anything like that, was just coming back. I mean, when I say short weekend, I think we were gone like 3 days, maybe 4. But that was like the reset I needed. And I came back feeling like rejuvenated at work. I was excited about the projects I was working on. Whereas, beforehand, I was just like crying at my desk, because I was just so miserable.
Well, and part of why this topic came up for us too is the fact that you have so much vacation time.
Yeah, like my boss basically said, look, you have too many days off on the books, because I never took vacation, to where I literally could have I think I had like 2 months worth of leave. And so she's like, you need to start taking it off. But now before, the old Melissa, pre-pandemic Melissa, would have been like kicking and screaming and been like, no, like I need those days. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why I needed that.
The company's going to melt without me.
Well, yeah, the company is going to dissolve. Like there's going to be so many fires. You can't operate this company without me. You need me. But that was like just a really unhealthy mindset. But now,
you think?
Okay, moving on. But now that trip to Zion really changed my outlook on days off. So when I was presented this opportunity by my boss to start taking days off, I was like, nope, not a problem. I'd be happy to. Yep, absolutely. I'll start taking days off. I'm going to start taking every Friday off. Now, originally, I was like, cool, I'll take Fridays off and I'll do a little podcast stuff. But then it's like, I'm going back to that old way of being where it's like, I'm going to fill up my time. And I'm like, you know what? No. I'll still probably do some podcast stuff like during the week. But if I'm like talking about unplugging and reconnecting with myself, I need to like not do anything.
I totally agree. And I look forward to seeing you more rested.
Well, if you've noticed, listeners, I don't know if any of y'all follow me on socials, but
You should.
I've been going on hikes. And what I love most about hikes, besides being out in nature, is the fact that my phone does not receive emails. It does not receive text messages. And I love, love, love being disconnected. What I also really like about it too is like, I find that when I come back from my hike, that the company is still there. It hasn't exploded or collapsed upon itself like I always told myself that it would.
How does that feel to know that it still functions without Melissa?
Okay, but that's only a day. I'm only gone a day. I don't know how it would be after like a week. I don't think I could ever really do that. I'm working on it.
You are working on baby steps, which is another episode that we'll record at some point. We keep saying it. Who knows when it will happen, listeners. But yeah, I mean, what would happen if you took a week off?
Oh my God. I think, and I'm sure others can relate to this. It's you enjoy the vacation at first, right? It's kind of like when Sunday approaches and you know that you have to go back to work the next day, and then it's almost like you're quickly taken out of that vacation mode or the relaxation mode, because now you're starting to like mentally gear up like, God, I don't even know how many emails I must have right now. I don't know like all the fires I'm going to need to put out. So I don't know. I think if I took a week off, like I would probably midweek, I'd be starting to like itch for like, oh, I need to check my emails. I'm just going to just look at it real quick, just like delete the junk mail. That is actually something that when I vacationed with Vince a few years ago, he's like, I know you can't stop looking at your emails. So we came into an agreement that, because I woke up before him, he's like, just look at it. And then as soon as I wake up, like you can't look at your emails anymore. And for me, I felt that was fair, because a lot of what I receive is just junk or subscriptions I've subscribed to. But for me, that number in my inbox was like so distracting for me. Mm-hmm. You're shaking your head. Why are you shaking your head?
I'm shaking my head because all I could think of was your word of the day dictionary emails that you get that you needed to be in such a hurry to check again.
Well, today was rueful, if you wanted to know.
I didn't actually want to know. But yeah, so you start getting that anxiety of, oh, what's there? What am I missing? Right. Mm-hmm. But, okay, Melissa's comfortable with taking one day off right now.
Little baby steps, right?
Right. No, and that's really important. Just being able to say, okay, I'm going to take this time off. Like, I don't think I've purposefully taken a day off just to take it off and do something. And it was something that I talked to my counselor about, and I mentioned it to you before, where I was getting really sad during the pandemic of just taking things off my calendar. And so I really enjoy the theater, and we travel for the theater because I'm that nerdy, and luckily Matt likes it too. And it was just, oh, well, now I can't take this day off. She's like, well, what do you mean you can't take the day off? It's like, well, we're not going anywhere. Like, she's like, well, why does it have to be that you have to be doing something or working? Why can't you just take the day off? And I was like, because I mean,
and what was your answer?
Well, I mean, that was it. I didn't really have a response because I hadn't really thought about just taking time off to take that time off. And now I'm realizing, no, I really do need to put more of that in, because it is that reset. It is just enough to be able to take that off. And what I found is that my body will tell me now. My body will be like, yo, we are tired. We are tired. You've been thinking too much. Like, you use your brain all the time, and you need to check out and mentally check out. So I'll do that. And I may stop working earlier in the day and, go for a walk or do something else, but I don't really do it enough. And I want to be more mindful of that. I really do want to build in more of that time of just, my brain needs a day off, and it doesn't need to be a day off where I'm doing stuff at the house. I don't need to be cleaning or attempting to clean, because, I'm not really good at that.
No.
Or attempting to,
No, you're not.
Melissa's really upset that she hasn't seen the upstairs of my house.
Okay, I have been friends with her. Side note, I'm sorry, listeners, but I've been friends with her for like 6 years. I have not seen the upstairs to her house. I'm only like given, access to the living room, the kitchen, and maybe the backyard.
You and everybody else.
Whatever. I feel like I'm special, but it's fine. So coming back though, I'm curious, when you were grappling with the idea of taking time or not taking time off because you were no longer going to the theater, did you end up taking those days off still?
I tried to. I just still kept them on the calendar just to have the ability to, have some flexibility for those days. And I'm trying to be more mindful of just keeping those things on there and really blocking off my time of, hey, I don't want to do this. And actually, the more I think about it, and even with our conversation, I do want to take at least like one day off a month where I'm not doing anything, where we're not running around doing errands, where we're not going to the grocery store to meal prep, where we're just, and maybe we're not even together, just some time myself of, hey, I'm going to take this time off and I'm going to paint today. I'm going to draw. I think those things are so valuable to really build in, but they're also the first things that go, where you're just like, I don't have time for this, or I'm not going to take care of these things that interest me. And I want to be more mindful of that. What I have done, though, that I found to be really exciting once I started doing it was, before switching jobs, I would take, my first job, I didn't take a week off between gigs. And I kind of regretted that, because it was like, you start working and you feel like, at least I did as a young professional, like, oh, I can't really take time off. Like, what's my boss going to say? What are they going to think? And, you really just can't do it. At least that's the feeling, right? Even though you totally can and you should, for your mental health and for you to actually be a better employee. And so I didn't switch, or I didn't take off time between my jobs when I switched over to a different law firm. And then I finally did. And I was like, oh man, 10 days off. Like, it was amazing. Like, you end on a Friday and then that next day, like, zero responsibilities other than staying alive. Like, it was magical. I went to the gym and like spent like 2 or 3 hours at the gym. I swam and I sat in the sauna. I mean, like, this was all pre-pandemic life, right? And it was just so nice to be able to, I even got a personal record for one of my swimming. I ended up swimming a mile because I was like, I'm going to swim a mile. Why not? I don't got to be anywhere. And it was just so nice to do things that I wanted to do, but I haven't been as an intentional with that, because I do think that it's easy for people to get caught up in the work, or, oh, well, I'll just call them. It's not a big deal. Or, I'll just take this one call. I'll check this one email. And in fact, one of the partners at my firm makes it a point to take cruise vacations. At least she did pre-pandemic, because there would be no reception there.
Smart. And so I'm listening to you talk about how you didn't take any time off between one gig to the next, because you were somewhat a baby lawyer at that time. What do you think changes between then and then now? Is it life experience? I mean, what has allowed you to make this like shift to where like, now I'm taking some time off?
I think it's realizing how hard it can be when you're in the grind. And as much as you want to take a week off, which I've been able to do, but it is so much work to be able to take that time off, because up until that moment, you're working. I mean, to the point that even when we would go up to Utah for the Shakespeare Festival, I would be like, okay, I'm going to log on to my laptop.
Weren't you like answering emails like as you all were driving out there?
Yes. And so that wasn't even giving me that transition to really break away. But what I've realized, and one of the things that I miss so much about the theater, is that during that time period, I will respect the theater rules. My phone will not be ringing. I would rather die than be that person.
Watch, there's a listener that's like, man, I am that person, or that did happen to me one time. No, yeah, I feel you. I think for me, it's, you and I have talked about energy before. I can have I always have something to do at work. Working for a small yet large, you're like, what, international company, there's always something to do, but I have to like go with where my energy is. And I have been, that young professional where it's grind. Like, what are my colleagues going to think? What's my boss going to think? Like, I don't want to seem like I dropped the ball on this. I need to reply to that email today, even though they just sent it to me at 6 p.m. But I'm going to make sure I respond, even though like I clocked out 2 hours ago, But I just found that like I'd be sitting at my desk, like getting resentful and angry. And it's, even though I had all these things to do, I had no energy to do it. And it's like, okay, the longer that I sit at this desk, how productive am I really going to be? I'm not. So I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting the company's time. I need to just realize and shut down for the day. And there are times where I've shut down at 2:00 in the afternoon because I'm like, I am serving no one by sitting behind this desk. Right. And I found that if I shut down at 2, sometimes the next morning I'll wake up at 7 feeling like, you know what? I needed that. I'm ready to go and start work early just because I can, right? Because I'm working from home. But it's just listening and being in tune with your body. And I think also as you get older, you realize the importance of your mental health, your wellness, and how precious it is, and how I think you and I have talked about this before. I don't know if we've actually talked about it on an episode, which is time is the one finite resource that we have. And how am I choosing to spend it? Am I choosing to give all my time to work? I used to, but that's not how I want to spend my time anymore because my time is so valuable.
Well, but did you have that realization pre-Rona?
No. I mean, I think I did on an individual level because I think, there are times where I think I even mentioned to you when I had my breakdown a couple of years ago and you're you spent the entire evening with me. That meant something to me because you could have spent your evening any other way, but you chose to spend time with me. So on an interpersonal level, I felt that I understood that. But when it came to my professional life, my professional persona and my personal persona are completely different beings. And I'm trying to meld them into one person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, working on that integration. But I think you posed a really interesting question. What is it that changes, right? And I do think that part of it is the age and wisdom, but I also just think it's having to do with realizing you're better if you take that time off. Mm-hmm. You really need to. And any time that I can set that boundary and not have my phone on, that's just magical. That's why I love the theater, because I could be in that space and I will respect that rule. But I've got at least 2.5 to 3 hours of just bliss. It could be the shittiest production and I'm going to be so into it because I don't have to be anywhere else. I have to be in that space in that moment. And I mean, sometimes I get so peaceful in there that I could feel myself falling asleep and it's no, but this is actually good. But my brain literally shuts down. And so that's another physical sign that I've noticed with myself when I'm so exhausted that my brain's just nope, we are done and lights out. And you just don't even feel it. You're just what happened?
I'm at a point in my life where I have just found the feature do not disturb. And that bitch is on all the time on my phone because I don't want to be disturbed. Don't text me, don't call me, don't because I found that I was easily distracted. If there was an email that popped through, I would stop what I was doing on a project and I would, pay attention because, this person's needs, hello people pleaser, was more important than my own. But you make a really good point about, energy, but I also think it's also comes down to priority. I was putting my priorities were all mixed up as a young professional, right? I put my career before myself. I put other people's expectations, my bosses, my colleagues, all before myself. And now I'm at a point where it's I matter. I'm worth something. And if I need a freaking day off, I'm taking the damn day off.
Well, I think there's also a mindset shift in there. I am not impressed if you tell me that you've worked for 20 days straight. I'm going to look at you you've made a choice to do that. That bragging that people try to do, that doesn't fly with me. That to me is you're not taking care of yourself. Mm-hmm. I'm also not impressed if you're man, I've been at the office every single day, putting in 15, 16, 17-hour days. Because again, you're not taking care of yourself. And I'm going to be a better employee, a better person, a better colleague, everything, if I've actually taken some time to reset. And so, yeah, I do take the weekends off. I try really hard. Sometimes I have to work on the weekends and that's okay. But I at least know that it's a choice that I'm making in the moment and that it's not forever. Keeping up with that grind of just, who are you trying to impress? Literally, you're not impressing anybody and they know that they're burning you out. Some places that's exactly what they're trying to do. And they know that that's their business model. But that part about the business model, once I realized, yeah, this work is still going to be here. The business model is to have too much work. That totally released me. And I just felt that weight come off of my shoulders of this is going to still be here tomorrow. And knowing this is going to be here tomorrow and realizing I'm not in a life or death situation. I'm not. I'm a civil litigation attorney. I'm dealing in the world of money. That is what's going to happen. Whether or not my clients get better is a good thing, and I want them to. But sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. At the end of the day, it's going to be some sort of money resolution. And there's always going to be more work. There's always going to be another car accident or slip and fall. And I am not always going to be available to go to that baby shower, to go spend that time getting a pedicure with, my friends. I can make those choices resting easy, knowing because the business model is to have too much to do, I have to put myself as a priority.
For me, it really does boil down to priorities. And I love that you and I have both kind of like reached this at the same time because, listeners here at the pod, we used to record Saturdays and Sundays depending on, if we had a guest. I remember in October, God, we had like 3 interviews or something like that in a week. And, in addition to that, we had our full-time job, plus we have, significant others and like all these things. So we were putting in a lot of work. But now you mentioned just a moment ago about how you try to keep weekends open. And so what we've, made the conscious decision to do is to move our recording sessions into midweek because, we're already in that work mindset. And this also frees our weekends to have those mental health days as well as spend time with our significant others, which is something that is a priority to us.
Right. And so that goes into, one of my values about matching your words with your actions, right? So I'm trying really hard to do that. And I'm being much more mindful and critical of the things that I'm putting on my weekend time. I don't mind recording a 1-hour episode on somebody else's podcast because I know it's an hour and I don't have to do much else other than show up, which is actually a pretty cool thing to do. But, I'm in a women's mastermind and they meet once a month on a Saturday. I'm like, okay, once a month on a Saturday for a couple hours. That's okay because Matt's going to go on his long walks and I don't go on the long walks anymore because I was having plantar fasciitis on my foot and it was painful to do that. And I'm afraid of
re-injuring yourself.
I don't know that it's re-injuring so much as it is like reactivating that injury is kind of what it is. And so he'll go on these long ass walks. I mean, I'm talking like 14, 16 miles on a Saturday morning. I'm not doing it. And, I'm willing to compromise and go for part of that. So I'll go to maybe like 3 or 4 miles with him. But he really just enjoys these long walks. He doesn't get any exercise in during the week because he works a lot. And so it's like, okay, well, if I know it's going to be a nice weekend and he's going to be able to go do that walk, I can do something for myself in the morning for a little bit. And it doesn't take away from that time. Now, if I'm spending, half the day away, that's something that I want to be more mindful. Why am I doing this? What's the purpose of this? And is it something that he's on board with? So as the listeners, you may know this, I am currently in training to be a life coach, a mindset coach. And so I'm doing that through the coactive training. And I put those trainings on the books and I'm going to be away for a couple weekends, but I also made it a point to get the 3-day weekend ones because I don't want to be away for 5 days from both my work, podcast, and my relationships. But he understands, okay, this is towards that bigger goal. It's a short period of time.
It's a short sacrifice.
It is, exactly. And so just knowing that you're being mindful about that, but that also means that those other weekends in, come May, June, and July, I'm going to be really protective of them because I want to make sure that we're spending that time, even if it's just being silly, just being the two of us. We both have this one saying, when we're on our phones and say we're watching TV or something, we'll ask each other, are you present right now? Are you present? And, usually it's because we're not, and we can pull ourselves back into the present. It's like, okay, let me put my phone away. Let me not try to.
I'm surprised you don't text them like, pay attention to me.
I do sometimes.
Okay.
I'm like, pay attention to me.
But I think that it's important to, when you talk about, being featured on another person's podcast or doing this like coactive coaching training and stuff that may happen on the weekends, I think that that's not to say that you can't do stuff on the weekends. It just has to be something that's enriching and worthwhile. Not to say that when we were recording the podcast that wasn't enriching. I love this podcast. It's fun. We have a blast. I mean, we probably spend more time talking off air than we do on air, but
this is true.
It takes all day though, right? And that's time that we're not spending with other people. And in essence, part of it is work, right? And so I would find when we were recording on the weekends, on Sundays typically, it was like, well, now the next day, it's like I didn't have necessarily like that downtime to like prepare myself for work. So even though I enjoyed this, that time to myself, my time to reset was diminished to like a small window on Saturday, which is typically spent running errands or doing the things, So it's like I wasn't giving myself the opportunity to reset.
Yeah. And so I do think that we definitely need to give ourselves that opportunity. And for me, because the pandemic did give me an opportunity to go a little deeper in my relationship with Matt, when I asked him, what is the favorite thing that you like doing? And he said, when we meal prep, when we do things, just like the mundane shit that we do. I'm like, really? That's your favorite? Okay. But it really also touched me because it was like, well, here I am spending so much time doing other things and I don't want to do that. And so, one of the things that I kind of came to the realization of it actually today was I feel like my pre-pandemic life is trying to creep back in because I was putting things on the calendar. I had to plan things out. But then I was talking to my coach about it and he was like, yeah, but you're aware of it. That's the big difference this time. And because you're aware of it, you are being more mindful in these other areas. Like, yeah, I am getting into this coaching training and those trainings are going to take me away for these weekends. That's okay. I'm planning for it as opposed to just figuring, getting to the end of the summer and being like, oh, wow, what happened? I don't know where the time went. And that's what it was really feeling like before the pandemic hit, where my time would just fly by. And as I noticed that, hey, I even had the same feeling when I got here today. I was like, well, I can't believe it's Thursday already. The days are going by very fast, but the difference is I am making every day count, which is something that I want to be doing. And I'm spending my time and energy in spaces that I want to be in.
I think that's so important. So important. I mean, and that space can be anywhere, right? I know that you've been really drawn to coaching and I'm really excited. She's really good, y'all. But for me, my space is anywhere but my office. No, it's outside, right? But I think it's also just connecting with yourself. Do you think some people, at least maybe I'm just speaking from my own personal experience, like if I'm by myself, like that's solitude. Now you're going to have to start to like deal with some shit, right? Because I know I operated from the standpoint that I'm going to stay busy so I don't have to deal with that difficult shit.
And I do see that. I do see that with people. I do think that is something that has come to the surface of, hey, the more busy I am, the less I have to deal with these things. I'm trying, I am actively working on that stuff. I'm coaching, I'm being coached. I've got therapy. I'm on the podcast. This is another form of therapy. And so I'm not afraid of that time, but I do want to be more conscious of it and be more deliberate about I'm taking this one day off, and it doesn't have to be for a purpose. It doesn't have to be because it's for the podcast or because, we're going out of town. Like, I just want to build that in as part of my norm, because if I really want to be an example of what I think is a well-functioning attorney, I need to do those things. I need to take that day off. And you know what? It doesn't have to be a Friday or a Monday. You can actually take the day off in the middle of the week, which is pretty amazing and feels pretty badass.
Well, not even just like a well-functioning attorney. I just think a well-functioning person.
Okay. Yes. Agreed.
Because I think that mental wellness is just so important. And I say unfortunately that I'm realizing this at 35, but it's so important in terms of just connecting with yourself. And I mentioned this earlier about that disconnect between my personal life and my professional life, and they need to be one person. right? I am, and if I need to take time off, and what you said about, well, now that the pandemic happened, like I can't take the days off that I had set to do. And I love what your counselor said. Like, why do we feel the need to fill it with stuff? Like, I was constantly like, if you think about like, how many times have we like just like binge watched like Netflix or like done puzzles or something like that? And we're like, man, we didn't really do anything today. No, those are the days to celebrate because you didn't do anything that day.
Right. And it goes back to some of the things that we talked about way back at the beginning of the podcast. We're talking about boredom and we're talking about creativity, that space, that time that you give yourself to really do nothing. Where does your mind go when it wanders? It was like, I can't remember the last time I let my mind wander because I'm not giving myself that space. It's like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll take a pause from reading or from listening to audiobooks or from engaging as much in social media to give myself that space. Yeah, because my brain does need the break. And I think part of it too is when you are a high achiever, and dare I say, we are both high achievers, we feel we have to constantly be performing, but we really don't. We really do need to give ourselves that break. And the more we do it, actually, the better we'll be able to do all the things that we want to do, which is literally all the things. We want to do all the things all the time. We want to hear from you. When was the last time you took a day off for you? Let us know in our private Facebook group, Pivotal Moments HQ. We want to thank our producer and music director, Ron Johnson. This has been an Astronomicus DMR production. We want to thank you for listening. Remember, it's never too late and you're right on time.